evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to you on the virtual panel discussion titled The New Rules of Employee Engagement in Hybrid Working Environments. Now, almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, discussions have been ripe around us on what the future of our workplace will look like once the restrictions around the pandemic fade away. But there have been ebbs and flows in the number of cases. Enterprises have been trying out different models of work, online, offline, and still trying to figure out what would be best for their own individual businesses. Amidst all of the uncertainty, there is also a growing consensus that hybrid work is here to stay, right? It's going to be a greater part of our lives than we've ever seen before. And, if we were to look at a recent report that Microsoft came out with, more than 73% of the workforce that formed part of the survey actually wanted flexible work options to continue post-pandemic. But what is post-pandemic, right? As we are in the face of perhaps the new variant becoming more viral, shutdowns and lockdowns of certain measures taking place across the globe, will there ever really be a post-pandemic world? And do we really then need to make locational flexibility as well as hybrid workplaces more a norm than an outlier? Right? But coupled with this, there is also fatigue that sets in, right? Zoom fatigue. There is a fatigue of workforce not being motivated enough, not being connected enough with the team in an environment where they can be face to face, and that can pose different challenges as well, right? So on today's panel, powered by Worker, we want to delve into the new rules of employee engagement. We want to try and understand how innovative virtual work platforms can actually help solve some of these challenges, right? I'm your host, Saina Denugara, and joining me today on the panel are Augustus Azaria, Human Resources Leader at IBM India Private Limited, Bangalore, Anil Chandel, who's the CEO and co-founder of Worker, and Ivo Sapar, who's the co-founder and CEO of Remote How, which is one of the world's leading consulting and educational platforms for remote and hybrid teams. Thank you very much for joining us today and welcome to this conversation. Augustus, let me actually begin with you, right?
So thank you so much, Saina, and hi to Anil and Ivo. Truly delighted to be here on this platform.
Yes. Let me actually put the first question to you, Augustus. So when you look at, the overnight sort of reaction that came in to maintain business continuity in India, we tried to flatten the COVID-19 curve. And it's been 2 years, right, since then. And it seems we are pretty much where we started with the new Omicron variant coming to the fore. What are your own impressions on remote work actually finally becoming more mainstream from a longer term perspective?
Sure, Saina. Thanks for the question. And I can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? The COVID. And yes, way back in 2020 when it struck us and we all went into what I call a panic mode, right? And chaos ruled supreme. And except for some established companies who were practicing remote working, it took everybody by surprise, the entire industry, and various things had come to the fore, all right? And one of them was, how do we go and do it? The technology challenge, the logistics challenge. Then came the wellness and well-being of the workforce challenge. And then the last but not least is the duty of care, all right? And the duty of care is about equipping employees with the tools and processes that they require for them to be productive. So in this particular case, it could be an ergonomic chair, it could be a UPS system, it could be earphones and headphones and so on and so forth. But to be very clear in terms of the answer to your question was, see, we were evolving towards something like this, but not fully this, right? Because we were all trained for the perfect storm. All right. And, HR goes and trains people in all kinds of competencies and behaviors, from risk taking to adaptability to all these things, and hoping that the perfect storm will hit us and we'll be able to ride the storm. Then came the pandemic, right? The perfect storm did hit us. But what happened is that we started riding the storms in our little small boats. It was one storm, many boats. And therefore, whatever we learned in terms of survival, in terms of adapting to the shifting business and industrial environments, to safety, to risk taking, all this came to the fore, right? And we tried them all. And finally, we are trying to stay afloat, getting integrated, each of us in our own ways, all right? And today, we are moving from a COVID chaos situation to a COVID neutral situation. Now, it could be a COVID neutral situation or just a workforce neutral situation, because God forbid something else hits us. Are we ready for it now that we have evolved? And if we have to rush back to offices, schools, and other places, I think that goes against the laws of nature, right? Because as a species, we evolved, we adapted, all right? Otherwise, we'll get destroyed like the dinosaurs. Sorry to sound so dramatic, but typically, I'm not a strong encourager of running all the way back to offices thinking everything is all right. No, we figured out ways of working. We were productive doing it. Surveys indicate that learning and skilling went up by nearly 20%. Of course, there were some drawbacks too. There was, wellness issues and so on and so forth, which are challenges in any transition, which we have to learn to find solutions to. But to conclude, I think it's here to stay. We have to go adapt ourselves to the hybrid workplace model, and we have to also condition our behaviors towards that. Thank you so much, Saina.
All right. No, interesting points there, Augustus. And we'll circle back to some of those, right, in terms of how workplaces can become more efficient to manage hybrid work, right, which is online, offline, in person, and remote. But speaking of remote, let me come to you, Ivo. The other thing that the last 2 years have sort of taught us is that you can be a whole new talent pool opened up, right? Once we kind of lifted those blinkers that we had on, that you had to meet your team mate every day in the morning and spend 8 to 10 hours with him or her in office. And when everyone was remote, you suddenly realized that you then didn't need to restrict and the people that you were hiring into your organization to a city, right? And not even to your country. You could access a global talent pool. Give us some of your perspective learning over the last many years that you've been in this remote space, and tell us what you've seen as far as the acceptance of creating globally remote teams is concerned.
Yes, so definitely that was already happening before pandemic, but of course on a small scale. But there were already many successful companies worth billions of dollars. To give you some examples, GitLab, Automatic, to name a few, that were hiring people all over the world. For them, it didn't matter if you're in the office, at home, in your co-working space, or at the beach. That was irrelevant. What was important is that the work is getting done and that people are happy when they are working. So this model was working long time before pandemic. Companies were embracing this, but that was a tiny niche. So basically, when we were talking with companies prior to 2020 about remote work, the main challenge was the mindset. So it wasn't even like how we will do it. Like it was, this won't work. I need to have everyone in my office. I will be hiring only people from my city. Or if I'm hiring someone from outside the city, I will try to relocate them. So that was really a lot of things related to just how we think. And majority of this was caused because of lack of trust. And I'm sure this topic will be coming back. So these companies build the foundation that the framework works. That was also something that gave a very positive impact on countries where they were hiring these people, because these people basically tapped into work opportunities from companies in Silicon Valley, in Europe, without the need to relocate and earning decent salary and meeting people from all over the world. So that was a pure win-win for both sides. And now it's end of 2021, and basically what happened throughout these 2 years, Of course, more companies, especially startups and scale up, realize that this is the way to go, mainly because there is a humongous shortage of talent on the market. So if you want to hire a software engineer, product person, designer, doesn't matter, it's actually almost impossible if you're not allowing people to work remotely. And still, this is a small group. Large companies, the ones that were against remote work before pandemic, now they will be making these decisions. Like we work with large companies like Walmart, ING Bank, OLX Group, etc. In these companies, the transformation happens slower. So for them, basically up until end of 2020, it was like, this will go away. We will probably move back to the old world. 2021 was the moment where, oh, maybe it won't go away and maybe this is the permanent future. So we need to figure out first how we were doing this internally before we actually think about hiring someone in the middle of nowhere, right? Because it doesn't matter for us where this person is. So our prediction is that this will grow significantly in 2022 when these large companies first figure out how to do mainly hybrid internally, and then they'll be like, okay, this is figured out, which for many companies will take years. Just to also keep this in mind, there will be a lot of blood and tears before they open up to the global talent. But this is the future. There's no way of coming back. So if we still have some people listening to us who are like, I don't know. No, like this is a fact. This is not an opinion. So now you need to do everything to be ready for the near future.
Got it, Ivo. Thanks for that. Anil, coming to you, right? Tell us a little bit about, so we've spoken about the organization's point of view, right? Let us come to you from a team member or an employee's point of view, right? What are organizations like yours doing to make this hybrid work really thrive, right? What are some of the challenges that you've seen folks face when they're trying to balance home and work? Also now try to balance a hybrid workspace where there might be, apprehensions about team members who are in a physical workspace while some of them have to, because of circumstance, continue to be online or remote. Talk to us about some of those challenges and how Workr helps overcome some of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, I think, in this world that we're in today. However, I don't think this world has been alien to us anyway. We may be working in silos in organizations where teams are sitting on different floors. You're still disconnected, and so how do you keep those teams working together? The fact is, the world just become a lot bigger. Yeah, and we're now spread out in a much larger space. So it's bigger in some senses where, as Ivo said, we've got teams sitting all around the world. And as Augustus said, we were challenging ourselves anyway. Could we work in this way? And I think we've realized we can work in this way. So I think the world has always been moving towards new ways of the workplaces, adapting. We've seen it from the very early stages, from going from cubicles and having the corner office to having a more, diverse, open floor places to work in, to then having co-working offices, to then being allowed to work from home occasionally. So I think the evolution of work was always happening, and the technology was always there as well. If you cast your mind back, some of you will remember things like remote desktop solutions that we used to use to access our computers that were physically based in an office. So I think technology-wise, the evolution of workplace has always been there. As Ivo said, I think the key thing is the changes in the mindsets of the business owners or the managers to drive that adoption. And I think COVID and the pandemic just forced it upon us to almost let us wake up and realize that we can work in this way. So it does work. However, as Augustus said, I think there's now this level of challenge we're facing in what happens next. How do you feel connected? How do you ensure the mental well-being and employee well-being whilst they're not in a physical space where you can see them, touch them, hear them on an hour to hour or a second to second basis. And that's where technology like Worka, has come about. And we're one of a few people in this space that are creating the immersive, visible experience of being in the same space of your colleagues, whilst you're not in the same physical space of your colleagues. So as much as it's great working in a flexible, distributed, working from home, co-working space, cafes, and so on, you still need to stay connected in some way with your colleagues. Otherwise, the negative aspects of working in this way starts kicking in. The isolation, the lack of productivity, the lack of self-belief, and worth in the business. So all these things start coming out in the longer term. So staying connected in some way is really important. And that's what Worka has been sort of focusing on. And that, I think, is where there's still a disconnect in organizations, working in a hybrid way or even in a completely remote way. How do you stay connected, and how do you ensure that your colleagues feel part of the same office environment, same workplace environment, so that they don't miss out on those little nuances of coffee chats, water cooler moments, just a morning walking in and saying, hi, how you doing? And seeing your colleague's face, whether it's lit up or whether they're not feeling so good, so you can put an arm around their shoulder. So I think it's quite interesting, where the world is going, but it's definitely hybrid. I don't think we can survive completely in our own four walls and not having physical contact. We're human beings, and human beings, yearn contact and touch and feel and all those emotions. So it's definitely hybrid. But what do you do when you're not in the same physical space, I think, is the big challenge which most organizations are facing and trying to get themselves ready for.
Right. On this, Augustus, you want to talk to us about, some of the best practices that you all might have implemented or that you've seen around you to actually make this bridging of the gap, the sort of camaraderie that I think we all miss in working remotely, come together more effectively? What have been some of your learnings? What are some of the things that you all have done that have actually worked well for you all?
A great question, Saina. So yes, engagement has been priority, right? In the sense, how do we engage a remote workforce more effectively? Okay. And is engagement only about you sending that box of chocolates, or does it go beyond that tokenism? Because there are a lot more issues today with a remote workforce than it was earlier. Okay, like I said, well-being, mental well-being, so on and so forth. Okay, but looking at engagement itself, I think there have been various platforms that came up, various tools that enabled much more effective engagement. But also you have to look at it, organization. This is very sector specific. There are sectors which are very new age. There are sectors which are multi-generational. Okay, and therefore we need to have the patience in terms of ensuring that the technology adaptation is done at a level, which is easily acceptable, digestible, and, doesn't create resistance in people, all right? And me coming from the IT services sector, I think it's all hunky-dory there. But if you look at various other sectors, there is some resistance. And that resistance also comes from the fact that, hey, everything seems to be safe. We should all get back to the workplace. And I'm a very strong proponent in terms of the new ways of working. Okay, while you can operate your machinery in a mine thousands of feet below, or fly a plane remote in the few years that will come, where your pilot will say, hi, I'm your captain and I'm working from home. Reality. Okay, so that's also about people getting the confidence, and I'll tell you a very India specific scenario. It's always been out of sight, out of mind. If I see you there at your desk, fine, I can take care of you. But if you're working remote, I don't have so much of a insight about what you're doing. So here comes the shift of manager's mindset. Okay, there should be a behavioral shift. You have to accept that that person is out there. And also there is this always on mentality, right? You think that, okay, somebody is working, so therefore, he's available, from 6 a.m. in the morning till 12 midnight because he's working from home. Well, we have to get away from all that, okay? And sensitivity in terms of how to handle it. I remember IBM employees went and made a pledge. They said they will be sensitive to people's place. They will be sensitive to people who are not camera ready. Okay, and there were like about 10 different things, and I can send it to you later. Which they took the pledge. This wasn't something that HR or the management gave to them, and it's also building tolerance in that system, right? Because we know very clearly, like as I'm speaking to you, I had my new couch delivered, and the carpenters and the movers were here just 5 minutes before the call. And you could well imagine the kind of stress it would put upon me. Okay, I'd already set up this. I wanted to be. I said, "This is my workplace. This is my Christmas tree. This is my home. I need to take pride in where I'm working from." And then these guys came, and everything I had to move. So you see, what happens is stress sets in, anxiety stress sets in, which you don't even plan for. Okay. And then comes, Jeff Bezos and Amazon and Flipkart. I don't understand how they figure out that exactly when I'm on this call like this, speaking to you on video, they plan to make a delivery. And there's the delivery guy's incessant finger on the buzzer, right? Or you're at home, the kitchen machine goes off, or your cooker starts screaming. See, these are all, and then there are children at home. There are elders at home who might need some help. Now, what happens here, we have to look at is to build that sensitivity and say, look, this is not office. This is still home. Let's come to terms with that. Okay, so don't officialize your home, but make it integrated. Okay. Because office is the new house guest. And if you're a house guest, what do? You're in your best behavior, right? As a house guest. Similarly, if the office is the house guest, it's got to be demonstrating the right behavior so that the house and office work together in a very integrated manner with tolerance, sensitivity, and above all, have fun at work. Whether it is my Christmas tree out here or whether it is the little puppy dog at the house, it's about having fun at work. Thank you.
So wonderful, building in empathy, building in trust, baking it in actually into our everyday lives, right? Trusting that folks that are working remotely or at work are doing their best under the circumstances. Anil, come in over here, tell us about how some of the products and services that you have actually have baked some of this in to make it easier for managers, make it easier for teams to work more collaboratively and actually nurture this empathy and trust that Augustus is.
Yeah, I mean, great insight from Augustus, from an organization like IBM, because I think some of the learns come from larger organizations. And, if you're a small business, it's far easier. It's a lot more tolerant. There's less structure. And I think the learnings are made together rather than in a large organization like IBM, where there's been a lot of structure over many decades of business integration. So I mean, we were focusing at Worka to ensure we were creating an online visible workspace which could replicate some of those nuances of the physical workspace. For example, being able to visibly see, a number of different rooms on your office and your floor. So you could walk over to a room, you can knock on a door, so you could hear somebody in the room could hear the knock. You could then come into the space and be allowed in to sit with your colleague and have a conversation, or just walk over to a space where people are just getting together and just switch yourself on and just have an impromptu conversation. So the visible user interface was really key for us. And that's been the key tenet on building Worka. And then how do we then automate some of the functions that we are used to from, be it our colleagues, or also provide that in a virtual manner. For example, if somebody's been sitting at their screen for, let's say, 2 hours and constantly, been on, as Augustus says, always on, how do you prompt them to take a break? Because we know a break is important. It's easier when you're in an office, because somebody will easily pop over and say, let's grab a coffee, let's just walk over, have a walk around. But when you're at home, you tend to forget that the colleague's not sitting next to you. So you could pop up a message to say, it's great to have a stand up, go for a walk. I know we have all this wearable technology today that tells you time to stand up, take a breather, but why don't we have that in our work environments when you're connected, in this virtual world? So firstly, it's visible. How do we create a UI which is visible and integrated to your colleagues? It's intuitive, where it prompts you to have these coffee breaks, just have those impromptu conversations. And then there's the virtual assistants that remind you to take those regular breaks, or remind you to switch off and just go and take your lunch because it's lunchtime. And take away the monotony really of I guess the video meetings that we've been so used to doing now, because that's not working from home. Video meetings were always there. And I think the world woke up into working from home, and they felt working from home meant video meetings, one after the other, after the other, after the other, so this so-called Zoom fatiguing that's happening nowadays. But it's not about video meetings. It's about collaboration. It's about engagement. It's about feeling good about you and your workplace and your workspace. And as Augustus says, about the empathy of your co-workers who are maybe a little bit camera shy, don't want to have their camera on. How do you bring them into the loop? I think the key thing to remember, though, is sometimes we overcomplicate things and we overthink it. Even though we may be working from home, there's two very key words in there: work and home. So you have to respect the work, that you have to be visible, you have to be there to be engaged whenever your colleagues require you to be engaged, rather than hiding away. And then home, respecting the environment, because you are in somebody's personal space, and there are going to be some of these challenges of the home as well. And the same goes for when you go to a coffee place and you work from a cafe, or you go from a co-working space and you're working from a co-working space, or some of the remote locations, that Eva and the team are, sort of setting up and getting people to come together and work as well. You have to respect those environments. So respect comes from all the different environments, and this isn't just the only way of doing it. Technology enables you to do it. I think you've got to be very mindful of the people issues that we need to bring into the environment, because we're working with people at the end of the day. We're not working with machines. Machines can only enable you and help you along that journey. It's the people which matter in this. And if we can bring the people along to the journey of this way of working and ensuring we're doing the best for them and doing the best for the organization, then it's a win-win.
Thank you, Anil. So, we spoke about some of the technology that's available, Ivo, but tell us from your perspective, right? What have you seen that has worked? What are some of the, technology that can be deployed? But what are some of, even the softer mindset or harder mindset changes that can actually enable making remote work more productive for everyone, and really bringing that joy to work every day, right?
Yes. So actually, what we see is that right now, technology is not the main challenge. The main challenge is how we change the way we are working, and past the mindset, because mindset is there, this is how we are doing this, but now operationally. And I will give you an example. The topic of well-being was brought up a couple of times already. But if you start asking a question, why there was and is a challenge of well-being, people working too much and then burning out, in many cases, what we see in companies that we work with, large, small, medium, remote, hybrid, it's because the work is done in the wrong way. And that comes to leaders. So basically, they're managing the team in a way that team is burning out. One of the most frequent cases is communication. You're always on, you're getting messages, you should respond immediately. It's email, Slack, Microsoft Team, doesn't matter, because that's the way to show that, hey, I'm in the office and I'm working. But that actually doesn't matter. What matters is that you got a project, you got a deadline, and this is what matters when the deadline comes. And the manager should be a mentor and not the micromanager that is checking your tasks, right? So looking at the very specific area where we see that change in the way the work is done, but also that technology will be supporting this is asynchronous communication, and in general, asynchronous work. So yes, absolutely, there are moments for engagement and collaboration, and this is extremely important, and the platform should support that. But then outside of this, when this is done, that there needs to be a framework of how the work is actually getting done without being constantly interrupting and proving that you're actually working, which is absolutely not the case. And there's a very interesting framework that Matt, CEO of Automattic, built, which is like a pyramid with 5 levels of autonomy of work. And the last level is nirvana, which basically means that you can work whenever, wherever, and no one that is working in the old school office environment can even come close to this level of not just productivity as individual or as an organization, but also to the level of satisfaction and joy that this work gives you. So I would look at absolutely the general how we are working, how we are supporting our teams, and how we are not interrupting with them deliver what they are supposed to do from the leader side. And there is a humongous legacy. Like, unfortunately, sorry to say, but majority of managers are bad managers, and this is the shift that needs to happen, right? And that goes beyond just remote or hybrid. This is just how we are working, and then the other, yes. I mean, in the long-term perspective, it's very good for all of us because we will simply optimize a lot of things. So that's very good. There's also an interesting trend, maybe a side comment there, for a 4-day work week, which we see more and more companies are starting to look at this. Some companies that were remote prior to pandemic, like Buffer, experimented with this last year and decided that they will stay with this. Even large companies like Microsoft in Japan in 2019, they did an experiment with this, and the productivity boosted by 40%. So there's also an interesting trend going around, but first you need to really figure out how to optimize how the work is done currently. End of side comment. And aside of communication, what's extremely important for hybrid teams is a single source of truth. So basically, it doesn't matter where you are, you have the place where you can go and find the answer. And that's actually very much connected with what I mentioned earlier about asynchronous communication, because majority of communication is written. So there is a history of what has been said. And right now, organizations need to figure out what will become the single source of truth, what will be the rules of engagement, what will be in general the rules, how they're building this knowledge and how they're maintaining and improving this, who is making sure that this is actually happening, etc., etc. So those are the two things that are connected to technology and the change. But first, company needs to change a lot of the systems around frameworks and how the work is done. And technology will be one of the last pieces. The good thing is that both of these things, individual contributors are involved. So it's not just that we're putting everything on leaders, and if they don't perform, we're done. But everyone can be the ambassador of change, and our behaviors, everyday behaviors, can basically push this change one by one. And maybe last comment from my side, we need to be honest with each other. Radical candor, which is one of the foundations how remote friendly companies were operating before, meant that if I see that something is not working, if I have a direct feedback to you, I'm telling you right away. I'm not doing circles and I'm not playing any games. I'm just saying this. I'm of course very polite and nice, but that's the only way how we can improve things. So that being said, if anything is not working within the company, if we have any problem, if we want to change how we communicate, if we want to change how we document things, we need to speak up, and that's the way to go about it moving forward.
Interesting points, Augustus. You want to comment on especially two of these, right, that Ivo brought up, which is, changing the nature of how we manage teams. Correct. What makes a good manager? Have there been internal discussions? How can HR work more proactively in this space to kind of, redefine some of these aspects on how work is judged, how productivity is measured, how teams respond and communicate within each other. And the other point is around appraisals, around how managers will look upon different team members and their different circumstances. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Okay, so Saina, I just wanted to mention something at the beginning, but I will it's a little housekeeping correction. It's no more IBM, so I moved with the IBM spin-off called Kyndryl. Okay, so sorry about that, just wanted to get it out of the way. So that's 90,000 employees and 19 billion in revenue, a startup, so to say. Yes, so with a strong IBM legacy and then the spin-off, and that's how trading on the New York Stock Exchange. So that out of the way. To come to your question, all right, now, what I tell technologists, see, we are at one of the most important paradigm shifts happening in the workplace. And we cannot rush into it and with the confidence that technology is the problem. Technology is the solution. Technology, no doubt, is the solution, but there is a journey, in terms of the technology and how people are going to get onto it. Typically, manager behavior, that's going to be very difficult, with the kind of remote working that we are having, and how are we going to change certain behaviors, change mindsets. Well, earlier you could, get everybody into a classroom. I could get behavioral scientists, psychologists, industrial psychologists, and we could all come together and say, hey, look, this is how it is, and, we will work out something. But today, what's happening is, in March, when you walked into the boardroom, not just me, but a lot of my colleagues in HR, the business started looking up at HR, saying that, what do we do? It was like, HR, I think you guys have the answer to this, okay? So the function also came to the table, all right? Which is good, all right? So the function understands the business, the function understands the technology, the function is now at the table. Now with the function now at the table, there are various things that need to be put in place. So one is the shift in mindset, which we've already kind of seen over the last 20 months. Okay, can it sustain itself? Okay, these are behaviors that need to be sustained, and sometimes not just reskilling and upskilling, but unskilling them and relearning is so important. All right, so unlearn certain things because this is a new era, and you have to relearn and upskill for this new era. While I say that, okay, there is another aspect, okay, which is called purpose. Now, I have in my own research, and you may have seen, there is close to 40% of people who have kind of quit their jobs. I saw that statistics, probably Europe, probably US.
Yeah.
Okay,
the US, the Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation, right? What triggered that? Now, if 73% say I'm happy working from home, then why did you quit? Quite a dichotomy, if you asked me. If I loved this, why would I quit? Okay. So what came into play here was, though I'm working from home, though I'm connected to some extent, engaged and all that, I feel that I need a change. So people, what happened is the pandemic and all these things also, became made something called a push factor. pushed me out of that comfort zone or from my chair and say, hey, let me go and see something else. Let me look at what is the unknown. And a good percentage of this 40% of people didn't have other jobs also. They just quit. Okay, so call it fatigue, call it stress, call it the curiosity to go and see the unknown. But undergirding all these things, when you have seen and lost people you were working alongside some time ago, members of your family, you're losing because there was no oxygen that came in time, and various such things that started hitting people very hard. And what am I doing here sitting? Let me do something. So purpose came into work. So in my research, I see there is something called the purpose-driven work that the new ways of working should bring. Now, to quickly elaborate what is purpose-driven work. Now, let's say, for example, I am coding in Java. I'm a Java coder, but I see all the pollution out here in my city and say, hey, I should do something about clean air. What can I do about clean air? Maybe I will go and buy a battery operated car, but that's about it, right? But I can do so much more. So what I do is that I quit this company and then I tell my manager, hey, I'm joining this airline company. And he's like, hey, airlines are going through bad times, pandemic and travel and all that. Why would you join an airline company? And you have this purpose, about clean air. I said, exactly why? Because this company is going to hire me to help them reduce their carbon footprint. And therefore, every line of code that I'm writing resonates with my purpose, with my value system, with my belief. And therefore, I'm more engaged. And organizations also need to come there and say, and ensure that that bridge happens. Okay, so this is the other thing, how technology can do it, how managers can bring that purpose-driven work and gig, right? So I will today work for this airline company two days in a week, and then I'll continue to work for this IT major for the other 2 days. And the 1 or 2 days left, I will try and do mountaineering or some extreme sport that I like. So you see, the new ways of working is just not about technology. It's about my aspiration, my behavior, what I want to do. It's about what I care. It's about purpose and a whole bunch of things. And this is not easy uptake for managers. All managers, this is not easy uptake. It's a journey.
Yeah.
HR, business, and it's the entire ecosystem that needs to drive it. It's not a HR responsibility to bring that.
It is not.
All right. So I'm going to stop. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and if I may add to this is an excellent point that goes really beyond just work and how we can optimize it and then change it. The story why we started Remote How 4 years ago when we lived in the US was because we noticed that there's a shift happening between experience over possession. So people wanted to experience something rather than buy a new shiny thing. And that was 4 years ago. And that really gave me a lot of thoughts, like what this is changing in the long term. And right now with working with a purpose and working to save the planet that is burning, more and more people basically woke up last year. They were like, oh, whoa, what am I doing? Maybe I can help somehow stop it. Or if it's not about saving the environment, maybe I should start doing something else that I'm doing. So many companies will need to not just redefine how they work, but also redefine who they are and why people should spend majority of their time during the day to help them grow revenues. Because these people, with, like I mentioned earlier, with the extremely competitive talent market, there will be more and more companies saying, hey, come to us and let's do something good. So that's another challenge that is already happening, that companies need to address, because the shift in minds of people already happened, or this is something in progress. And again, same as there's no going back from hybrid and remote, there's also no going back here. So the disruption is humongous also on this part. But then the end of the day, this is at least what I hope we will just get stronger out of this, and that's there is hope. Just want to add to Sans here.
Yeah, there is hope. Anil, your hopes for 2022, your biggest learnings from the last year as far as work is concerned, running, helping organizations, big and small, manage hybrid work. What do you see as something that cautions you for 2022 that also gives you hope?
Thanks for the question, Simon. I mean, I think it's a very big question. To try to sum up in a few words, but I love the sentiment of the last two comments from both Augustus and Ivo, because Augustus hit the nail on the head. This is about purpose. And I think even when we look at our journey working in this way didn't start in 2017 when we launched Worka. It started at least 5 years prior to that, and probably 2 decades of thinking prior to that as well. And it's been the purpose which has driven us to essentially fall upon a product, which could enable some of the technological aspects of it. But the purpose is very, very simple. And the purpose is, how can we change the workplaces of the future for good? And it's about the good things. How can we enable things which are working in this way, and how can we move forward in another positive way? The things we also forget, and I think the pandemic's been a little bit artificial for all of us, to force us to adapt to these things. But as Ivo said, we've had climate change on our doorstep, knock in for the last 2 decades, and we haven't really been waking up and thinking about this. Now, this way of working and this pandemic has forced us to think this really, really carefully, because even that short 2-year window and the 1 year of lockdown suddenly changed the face of some countries. I mean, you take India and Delhi, for example, it cleared the skies, the rivers were almost clean again, the trees and the birds were back out, and it allowed the climate, the world and the earth just to start breathing again. And I think it just needed that circuit breaker that we keep on talking about now with pandemics. It need the earth needed a circuit breaker. And then we look at inclusiveness of workforce, be that disabled, be it single parents, be it people that have to look after their elderly, people that maybe want to do a hobby alongside their very hard and difficult work. So it's about work-life integration. I wouldn't even say balance, because I think work-life balance is taken in the wrong way, but it's integration of your work and your life, and how do we get the most of that? Because we're all on this Ferris wheel of a rat race, trying to get to the next rung on the ladder, but do we stop and think? And again, the pandemic has allowed us to stop and think. What is tomorrow? Am I going to see tomorrow? Am I going to see next week? Am I going to see a next birthday? So let's make the most of, and let's absolutely live, the life that we genuinely want to live. So I think this new world that we're in and where we are heading is a lot more purposeful. We are more awake today than I think we ever have been in our lifetimes, both in our personal lives and in our work lives, to really make that change and actually take that step. And everything, all of us are doing in this room is adding towards that. And I think we've just got to remember the purpose, as Augustus said, what is the purpose of doing this, and focus on that, and things will work out. I mean, this is a blip, but it was a wake-up call. I think it's a wake-up call for everybody to say, how are we going to do this differently tomorrow, the day after? But we have to make that change today to ensure we face those things tomorrow. But it's the super exciting time. I think the world is changing. Workforces have become a lot closer. People can do more than one job if they really are workaholics. So it allows them to earn more, learn more, and actually just be doing this gig type economy. So super interesting time. I'm really looking forward to what 2022 and beyond brings along. pandemic has just put a big, magnifying glass on everything to say, hey guys, let's wake up. Let's see what we need to do. Let's see how we need to adapt, and let's take that step forward rather than sit and wait, because I think we've been doing that for too long. Yeah, as people in workplaces and organizations, let's act. I think is the key thing. Act to save the planet, work better. Put meaning and purpose to everything you do, and let's make the most of today, because nobody knows what's coming tomorrow. I think is the key message for today.
As we wind this up, I just want to take quick last comments from Augustus and Ivo. The one thing that in 2022 you hope from a work-life integration point of view that will definitely happen.
I'll let Ivo go first so that I can think.
Okay, all right, Ivo, go first. Long-standing wish that you think will come true in 2022. One thing.
Yes, one thing. Because the change requires new skills, and we need to have time to get these skills. I hope that more companies will set the mandate for learning that will not
wonderful
will not be an add-on to your 40 hours, but that will be a time when you're dedicating this to grow and grow as a professional, grow as a human. And this is nothing new. There are already companies who are saying, for instance, Fridays are for you, for your self-development, and people are just learning, and that basically pays off, because if you learn a new skill that you can then incorporate in your day-to-day operations, that's basically boosting your productivity, and you boost your productivity means more revenue for your company, so everyone wins, right? So if I could choose one that goes beyond remote hybrid, it's just about us becoming better humans, professionals. That would be this. It's very easy to implement. It's harder to make this decision, I would say.
No, wonderful. That's a wonderful thought. Augustus, for you?
Yeah, got my thoughts together. So what I've been talking about, we've experimenting rather, is managing by compassion. And I think we need to get on to the next level of managing by compassion and empathy, of course, without compromising on business results. We need to drive the productivity, skilling, and all that it is. But what is going to undergird success is managing by compassion and empathy. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think on that note, we'll conclude this very insightful session. Thank you very much, Augustus, Anil, Ivo, for joining us today. And I do want to thank Worker for partnering with us to bring this session to you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Stay well and have a good 2022.